Min Young, a poor college student, had just been assigned a dorm room. She offered each of her roommates 50,000 won on the condition that they do her favors in the future. Confused, her roommates asked, "Where did a poor student like you get this money?" Min Young flashed a captivating smile. It turned out she had a special kind of hallucinogenic cookie. Just one bite, and one could achieve their desires, albeit temporarily. One day, a classmate envied her best friend, the top student. Late at night, while her friend was holed up in the bathroom studying, the classmate pretended to be thoughtful, offering her a cookie and claiming it would give her boundless energy. Watching her friend eat the cookie, the girl turned, her smile fading as she hurried away. But in just a second, a strange glint appeared in the classmate's eyes. Looking back at the advanced math problems in front of her, a sudden surge of inspiration flooded her mind. She wrote furiously, working until dawn without a hint of sleepiness. Having experienced its effects, she asked her friend for more cookies. Her friend, anticipating this, had a backpack full and claimed the effects would be even stronger if she ate them all at once. Without a doubt, the girl went straight to the bathroom and ate them. But a scream echoed, "What is this?" This was the first incident. At this point, Min Young was unaware of what had happened to the girl. She was generously taking her older sister, Soo Young, shopping, picking out fashionable clothes and buying them all without even looking at the price tags. Soo Young was understandably suspicious, but Min Young lied, claiming it was a scholarship from a school partnership awarded to top students. Hearing this, Soo Young wanted to return the clothes, unwilling to let her sister spend money on such frivolous things. But Min Young pulled down her face mask, revealing a large scar, and snapped, "When are you going to live for yourself?" Seeing this, Soo Young was left speechless. After returning home, Min Young, remembering the girl's tragic situation in the bathroom, couldn't sleep for a long time. The next day, she forgot the cookies in her old uniform. Soo Young, while sorting clothes, couldn't help but smile. "Your snacking habits haven't changed." She casually slipped the cookies into her bag. Later, Soo Young's boss urgently summoned her to the factory. She didn't even have time for breakfast. Her stomach was rumbling when her boss offered her instant noodles. It turned out he'd called her in early to create an opportunity to be alone with her. Faced with this unexpected attention from her new boss, Soo Young found it hard to refuse. But out of politeness, she suddenly remembered the cookies from that morning. After placing the cookies down, Soo Young hurried out of the office, unaware that her colleagues were snickering. Seeing Soo Young frozen, her colleagues even mocked her sister's facial scar. They never expected Soo Young to snap at that moment. She, who usually appeared meek, suddenly became ferocious, knocking a female colleague to the ground in seconds. Before she could relish this, Soo Young suddenly received a call from her sister. On the other end, Min Young asked about the cookies' whereabouts. After confirming that Soo Young hadn't eaten them, Min Young told her to wait at the factory and abruptly hung up. Soo Young immediately sensed something was wrong. Just as she was about to call her sister back, her 35-year-old boss was walking towards her. He had unknowingly consumed the magical cookies. Suddenly, he found himself lost in a fantasy. In his hallucination, 100 female employees transformed into top models, all surrounding him. The man was beaming, unaware that this was a deceptive illusion. Finally, he trembled and emitted an unidentified fluid before promptly fainting. Seeing this, Soo Young immediately thought of the cookies she had given him earlier, the ones she'd taken from her sister's bag. Coincidentally, her sister arrived at the scene, and Soo Young couldn't help but ask about the cookies' origin. But her sister changed the subject, announcing she had a boyfriend who didn't care about her scar. Since childhood, no man had shown her any interest, and these cookies, she claimed, were made by her boyfriend. They were so precious, she didn't want to eat them. Seeing her sister cry like this, Soo Young's heart immediately melted. Feeling her sister's pain, she rushed to hug her. Unbeknownst to Soo Young, Min Young had returned to campus, taken a picture of someone removing their face mask, and pulled another person into a staged sweet photo with her. She then sent these photos to her sister. Min Young had asked Ho Soo to play the role of her fake boyfriend, promising to pay him 20,000 won per instance. The chairman's grandson, finding this amusing, immediately expressed interest in replacing Ho Soo and dating her. Min Young not only ignored him but pulled out her wallet, paying Ho Soo 80,000 won in advance, with a bonus. Seeing the chairman's grandson about to lose his temper, a teacher called Min Young out. assuming the teacher would reprimand her for being late. Min Young, surprisingly, used this opportunity to solicit another favor. She readily agreed to double the initial offer if the teacher would help deal with her sister, putting her mind at ease. But how could a poor student have access to so much money? That night, Su Young heard the keypad beeping at the door. Her sister didn't come home often and must have forgotten the entry code. She hurried to open the door, only to find the lecherous boss standing there. Su Young tried to close the door, but he blocked her. Faced with a significant power imbalance, he forced his way inside. He claimed he meant no harm, only wanting the hallucinogenic cookies. Su Young, unaware of the cookies' true nature, panicked and confessed they were made by her sister's boyfriend. At this moment, her sister texted, urging her not to come home. Inside, Su Young prepared to call the police, but was caught by the man, who snatched her phone and nearly went into a complete frenzy. Min Young called at that moment, saying, "Where are the cookies? Just give them to me and I'll leave. I won't make a big deal out of this." The perverted boss had searched the entire house, but couldn't find any cookies. Terrified, he decided to directly attack Su Young. At this critical juncture, Min Young finally returned. She used the cookies as bait to get the man to untie her sister, but he insisted on leaving with the cookies. As she spoke, she moved to grab the cookies. Unbeknownst to him, the police had already arrived, thanks to Ho Su, who had cautiously called them after Min Young left. Seemingly outmatched, Min Young threw the cookies out the door with all her might. The man, fixated on the cookies, picked them up and ran. To his surprise, he was immediately apprehended by the arriving police. Even in custody, he tried to eat the cookies, raising many questions for the officers. However, Min Young wasn't fazed by this scene because they were just ordinary cookies. Back home, Min Young looked at the scars on her face. The shadows of her childhood resurfaced. As a child, she endured her father's abuse. Hiding in the bathroom, she called the police, but they never came. Her phone died. Left with no choice, she smashed the mirror, using the shards for self-defense. But due to the immense difference in strength, her abusive father severely scarred her face. Her sister, terrified by the scene, had locked herself behind the door. The memory of the past, like the scar on her face, occasionally tormented her. During these times, Min Young sought refuge in the illusions brought on by the cookies. As she swallowed a piece, the scar on her face seemed to fade, as if the painful past had never existed. She smiled blissfully in her hallucination and passed out, oblivious to the fact that the police were still investigating the mystery of her cookies. At this point, the police also received a tip from the perverted boss that Min Young was the true source of the cookies. "I didn't see any cookies," he insisted. Misfortune suddenly befell the chairman's grandson at school, exposing Min Young's secret. She was selling the cookies. Even though Min Young had a knife hidden behind her back, he remained calm. "Who are you? What do you want?" he asked. Behind the scenes, the true mastermind emerged. It turned out the cookies were all made by someone else. A mysterious figure, codenamed Chef, had hired a new operative to handle emergencies on campus, the chairman's grandson. As for the customers, Chef was eliminating them with their own cookies. The cafeteria lady told Min Young not to panic, as no harmful substances had been detected. The chairman's grandson had also destroyed all surveillance evidence. Regarding the police investigation, she would find a way to handle it. Meanwhile, the persistent police officer continued his investigation. Leaving the school, he spotted the teacher acting suspiciously near his car. When confronted, the teacher claimed he was just looking for a lighter and reminded the officer to drive safely. That night, the officer visited Min Young's home and persuaded her sister, Su Young, to help uncover the truth. Su Young sought out Ho Su, her sister's fake boyfriend, to learn how to make the cookies, hoping to prove who was responsible. Unexpectedly, to maintain Min Young's lie, Ho Su had learned the baking process. He also lied, claiming his father was a baker. On his way home, the officer received a call from his superior, ordering him to cease his investigation into the school incidents. Numerous parents and the school corporation were protesting, and further involvement would result in disciplinary action. Frustrated, the officer had no choice but to drink some iced water to quell his anger. The next moment, he felt dizzy. The following day, Su Young saw news of a classmate of her sister's dying because of the cookies. She frantically called the officer. However, a stranger answered. Something happened to the owner of this phone. He was seriously injured in a traffic accident and can't answer. What's your name? I'll have him call you as soon as he wakes up. In the school's top class, the teacher announced a female student's suicide. Hearing this, Min Young looked at the chairman's grandson suspiciously. The top class had been reduced to 9 students, and their homeroom teacher was the man who had been lurking near the police officer's car. Finally, Chef snapped. Or rather, if she wasn't already crazy, how could she handle things this way? Officer Park had died in a traffic accident. Are you crazy enough to want to make things bigger? Don't be ridiculous, someone said. How dare you be dissatisfied with Chef? Chef's position is different from ours. We don't know their identity. If discovered, they'll disappear, but what about us? As things escalated, Min Young grew increasingly uneasy. She wanted to contact Chef directly to understand the situation, but was met with mockery. Were you at the scene of the officer's accident last night? Have you visited your sister? Did she really not tell you anything? The mounting strange incidents left Su Young distraught. Worried her sister was caught in this dangerous spiral, she went directly to the school to investigate. She bumped into the cafeteria lady. The lady looked at her name tag and then silently lowered her head to put away dishes. She deliberately dropped a cookie in front of Su Young, leaving her confused. Unexpectedly, Su Young followed the lady to the basement and saw the face mask her sister always wore. When the lady brought out a basket full of cookies, Su Young became certain that this person was part of the hidden organization manipulating her sister. So, she took out her phone and started to call the police. Meanwhile, Min Young was being interviewed by the teacher. He revealed he knew about her activities at school and his true identity as a police officer. He offered Min Young a chance to cooperate to lessen her guilt. Unexpectedly, Min Young responded with an unflinching smile. The two began a game of bargaining chips. At this point, Min Young received a call from her aunt, saying her older sister was in the basement and wanted to call the police. Before she had time to think, she rushed out the door. The teacher, curious about the cookie operation, also followed. Meanwhile, her sister, realizing that calling the police would also implicate Min Young, put down the phone. Seeing this, the increasingly delusional aunt smugly explained everything to Su Young, the older sister. It turned out that Min Young's sudden wealth came from joining their cookie-selling organization, and the police investigation into the deaths related to the cookies was also connected to them. They were controlling everything behind the scenes. Su Young, just as naive as her sister, only reacted after hearing this. Clueless, she followed her aunt into the devil's den. She tried her best to escape, but a locked iron gate awaited her. With no other choice, she gave up, put down the cookies, and pleaded, promising to keep their secrets if they would just let Min Young leave the organization. This absurd additional condition made her aunt laugh. She explained that Min Young was still relying on the cookie-induced hallucinations to cope with the pain caused by the scar on her face. The harder Su Young worked to earn money for school, the more guilty Min Young felt. This pressure was suffocating her, so she needed this job as an escape from poverty. Hearing this, Su Young suddenly erupted with surprising strength. She slammed her aunt against the wall, fueled by the memory of Min Young's facial scar, inflicted by their father, a wound Su Young felt responsible for. Just as her aunt was about to collapse, Min Young arrived in the basement. Su Young, still clinging to a sliver of hope, wanted to hear Min Young say it was all a lie. However, Min Young remained silent, facing her distraught sister. Min Young asked her aunt to contact the chef, the mastermind behind the operation. She said she would take full responsibility. Unexpectedly, this enraged Su Young. Do you know how selfish you are? Just because of that scar, how long are you going to keep using this as an excuse? As she spoke, she ripped off her jacket, revealing countless scars all over her body. These were old wounds, evidence of their father's abuse, which Min Young knew nothing about. That scar on your face, it's all my fault because I was careless that day. You know it wasn't my fault, but damn it. I've been working so hard, doing whatever I can to survive. I gave up everything and lived only for you. You're doing things I can't, is that it? Is it all because of a single scar? In truth, she also wanted Min Young to forget about the scar. Just live like a normal person. Min Young also wanted her sister to escape the nightmare, to live for herself. But what good were words? Some wounds couldn't be healed with words alone. At this moment, the aunt received a message from the chef. He was willing to let Su Young go. However, this wasn't out of kindness. In addition to demanding Soo Young's silence, he required her to continue eating the cookies, expressing a strange curiosity about her dreams. If she refused, Min Young would be forced to eat more. "Is there any other way?" Min Young pleaded. "No, you can't. Absolutely not." Soo Young had a plan. She suddenly turned to the camera and knelt, begging to take Min Young's place, working for the chef, just to get her sister away from the cookies. She was willing to do work 100 times more dangerous and eat the cookies herself, perhaps realizing that dramatic gestures might sway the chef. He agreed. "Thank you, sister," Min Young sobbed. "How can you trust him?" "It's not your fault," Soo Young insisted. "It's all my fault, so don't do this." Soo Young saw Min Young's picture at her own funeral. Looking closely, there was nothing but sadness in her eyes, and perhaps a hint of a smile. After her sister's death, Soo Young could finally live for herself, resuming her studies, learning to dress up, participating in social activities. This was the life she had always wanted. But it was all a dream. However, for Soo Young, it felt incredibly real. Her sister's fake boyfriend, seeing her wake up, went to get a doctor. Soo Young, still lost in the illusion of losing her sister, then saw Min Young unconscious on a stretcher. Ho-soo also jolted awake, realizing he was still dreaming. He walked outside in a daze until the pain of bumping into a patient brought him back to reality. Soo Young slapped herself a few times, telling herself it was a dream, urging herself to wake up. What exactly was happening? It turned out Soo Young had fallen into a coma after eating the cookie. Min Young asked Ho-soo to take her sister to the hospital. She then actively sought out the undercover cop, the teacher, and surrendered, willing to provide information about the cookies, hoping the police could destroy the operation as soon as possible. But why the change of heart? Hadn't the teacher wanted proof to demonstrate his integrity and competence as an officer? What had happened? "I'll tell you later," Min Young said. "I'll confess everything after I'm arrested. We'll prepare beforehand, don't worry." Min Young fully believed the teacher was the undercover cop. Racing against time, she returned to prepare the information while her aunt received a message from the chef to reopen the business and release the cookie-making uncle to help. Simultaneously, Min Young sent the information to the teacher. The man who received the message smiled, a rather sinister smile. Moments later, Min Young rushed into the basement, proudly announcing to her aunt that she had called the police. But her aunt didn't seem fazed. At this point, the cookie-making uncle entered the scene. Min Young, unaware of his existence, was overwhelmed by his menacing aura and wanted to flee. But he grabbed her, and as punishment, forced 2 cookies into her mouth. Near death, Min Young looked towards the door, the countdown to the police's arrival flashing before her eyes. The police would end it all, but she was losing hope. Meanwhile, the teacher, seeing the ambulance outside the window, woke up and went to class as usual. That night, the police located him. His identity as a narcotics officer was confirmed, but records showed he was suspended, a fact only the overweight officer at the station knew. How could the teacher be working undercover at the school? The explanation was that as an undercover agent, his status was confidential. The overweight officer didn't think much of it, agreeing to visit Min Young with the teacher at the hospital. However, they didn't expect much. Min Young still had a plan. She revealed to the overweight officer that she had been working with the teacher on the investigation. The officer naturally assumed the teacher was indeed undercover, deciding to collaborate with him. This triggered the teacher's murderous intent, leading him to eliminate the overweight officer. Afterward, the teacher went to the hospital where Min Young remained unconscious. He picked up a nearby phone and discovered it belonged to Soo Young. A pre-recorded message played, and simultaneously, Soo Young, wearing Min Young's school uniform, headed to the school. "I want to confess. Today, I'm going to kill someone. I will definitely kill someone." Soo Young, armed with a knife, entered the cookie shop. The leader, pressured, revealed himself as the chef and produced an antidote. Unexpectedly, Ho-soo, concerned about Min Young, followed Soo Young to the den. He was discovered by the thugs and became a test subject for the antidote. The cookie-making uncle forced 2 cookies on Ho-soo. 1 could make dreams come true, 2 would induce a permanent coma, just like Min Young. Ho-soo closed his eyes and lost consciousness. The uncle injected the antidote. Shortly after, miraculously, he woke up. Witnessing this, Soo Young, desperate for hope, wanted to test the antidote herself. Ho-soo's revival gave her a glimmer of hope. But what she didn't know was that as Hosu was thrown back into the school hallway, a knowing smile spread across his face. The camera then focuses on the aunt receiving a call from the chef, who frankly explains his elaborate plan. He recognizes Soo Young's strong will to survive, precisely the quality their organization needs. The chef promises to provide the antidote to revive Min Young if Soo Young works diligently. Otherwise, he threatens Min Young's life in the hospital. Soo Young, hearing this, rushes to the hospital, only to realize she's been tricked. The aunt questions the chef's decision. Min Young almost alerted the police, and Soo Young nearly exposed them again. Why recruit her? The chef dismisses her concerns, emphasizing the real threat, the mysterious teacher. Min Young gave him information, but he hasn't contacted the police. And how could he, being part of a shadowy organization himself? Their goal is the cookie recipe. The overweight officer is already in their clutches. More shockingly, the teacher had a similar experience in the past, ultimately choosing to leave the organization. Soo Young, looking at her unconscious sister, contemplates the chef's offer. Despite their love-hate relationship, the sisters share the same thoughts. Soo Young decides to abandon her past, inheriting her sister's will and becoming the person the chef desires. She chooses ruthlessness. Her timid persona is shed along with her long hair. She reinvents herself as a Korean American, returning to Myeong-seo. Her fabricated American businessman parents make the teacher envious. But due to school regulations, she must attend preparatory classes, proving her academic excellence to transfer to the top class. In the crowd, only the undercover teacher refrains from discussion, staring intently at the transfer student. He takes charge, guiding Soo Young through the school. Is it because it's your first day? You seem nervous. No, I'm fine, Soo Young replies. Well, don't worry. What suits you? A female student's underwear is stolen and used as protection money. The bully takes it, inhaling deeply. Something's wrong. It's brand new, with tags still attached. There's no scent. He's about to teach the bespectacled girl a lesson when he accidentally touches a cookie hidden in her bra. He doesn't realize this cookie is worth 3 million won. Finding it amusing, he proposes a game. If she catches and eats the cookie, she gets 1 million won. He throws it, but a hand intercepts it. Hosu, the kind, naive Hosu, appears, ready to help her win the money, while condemning their bullying. Soo Young, noticing a missing cookie, is more worried than anyone. The bespectacled girl offers a deal. If I tell you where the cookies are, will you give me your underwear? Hosu, briefly looking heroic, is then brutally beaten. Fortunately, Soo Young arrives. I heard someone wants to buy my underwear. That's low-level fun. I'll offer you something more exciting. She has video evidence of the bullying. The bully is unconcerned. Hosu, again briefly looking heroic, is kicked to the ground. Soo Young won't bother sending the video to the school. She'll send it directly to his father's law firm, making it public. As the bully shows concern, she offers to delete the video if he buys something from her, something far more exciting than underwear. Soo Young secures her first sale. The bully eagerly eats the cookie. Rainbows fill his eyes as a smirk appears, and he falls into a hallucination. He envisions fulfilling his violent sexual fantasies with the alluring young Seo. He becomes excited as she approaches, dripping candle wax onto his body. The next day, seeing the smug look on the bully's face, Soo Young knew her bait had been taken, and this person would become her money printing machine. After school, she found Hosu and thanked him for taking care of her and her sister. Unexpectedly, Hosu asked directly, "How many cookies do you need to sell to get the antidote for your sister?" Soo Young thought of her shameless tactics yesterday that had scared Hosu. However, Hosu offered to help her quickly reach the quota to exchange for Min Young's antidote. The goal was to sell all the cookies as fast as possible. Unbeknownst to them, a teacher witnessed this exchange. With Soo Young's burgeoning business, the cookie trade was back in full swing. Even though one cookie cost 3 million won, it was nothing to these wealthy kids. Most of them were under immense academic pressure. That's why they relied on the cookies to temporarily boost their intelligence and improve their performance. Just one bite would increase their focus and double their study results. Half a cookie would elevate their mood. Eating a whole cookie would make even far-fetched dreams, like becoming an idol, come true. But eating more than one a day? Min Young was a prime example of what happened then. However, the person developing the cookies and growing the business was a chef working behind the scenes. Nobody knew who the chef was. As the team and business grew larger, the person in charge couldn't help but be curious and ask, "Who is the chef? Can you tell me quietly?" they continued. "I heard Min Young gave that information to the police. I'm really worried." "I'll tell you what, I know someone in the police force. I'll take care of it, don't worry." And to Soo Young, they warned, "If you ask about my personal information, you'll be fired." At the end of the previous segment, the mysterious chef was revealed. Surprisingly, it was Ho Soo, the smartest and kindest student in the school. Even when bullied, he always wore a bright, triumphant smile without retaliating. Fortunately, Soo Young witnessed Jin Woo, his constant tormentor, bullying him and chivalrously intervened. Ho Soo also revealed that he knew everything about Min Young's connection to the strange cookies, yet he acted naive, pretending to know nothing. So, once again, Soo Young stepped in to confront Jin Woo, the school's prized student, and was immediately mocked and ostracized by her classmates. Her desk became a garbage dump. The girl with glasses left a note severing their friendship, fearing repercussions. Soo Young was cut in line at lunch and even had coffee spilled on her. Yet, she fearlessly confronted Jin Woo again, then hid in a corner to enjoy a cookie. The Canadian ghost memorized the answers to every test and began her business. Even after her roommate went to sleep, Soo Young meticulously reviewed everything. Math became as easy as eating candy. Soon, she took first place with a perfect score, making even her homeroom teacher suspicious. Hee Jin was seething with jealousy at this arrogant comeback. The teacher also kept a close eye on Soo Young. Position truly determined everything. The girl with glasses acted friendly again, as if their falling out had never happened, even claiming to be Soo Young's first friend. It's no wonder Soo Young found it all ridiculous. Just like that, from a failing student, she smoothly ascended to the top class, under the admiring gaze of everyone. However, Hee Jin still didn't believe the results and presented a math problem she had solved correctly, while everyone else was stumped. To prevent the worst-case scenario and Soo Young's methods being exposed, Ho Soo immediately intervened. However, everyone found the situation quite entertaining and egged them on. Young Seo, willing to play along, slowly began solving the problem on the board, but after a period of intense scribbling, declared she couldn't solve it. "So, are you satisfied now? You can't even solve a simple substitution problem. This problem simply has no solution. It doesn't mean you're incompetent," she stated. It turned out Jin Woo had given her the problem and admitted he'd made a mistake. To further humiliate Hee Jin, he drew out the word "hey" and even made her apologize to Young Seo, his girlfriend. It was an unexpected move. That very night, Soo Young met with Jin Woo and wondered, why would a rich and intelligent student become a bakery employee? There are only two possibilities. Either Jin Woo is a clumsy chef bad at hiding his identity, or he's a genuine eccentric that normal people can't understand. But regardless, she wanted them to become a couple, which is why they were holding hands and gazing at each other so affectionately in public. Meanwhile, the teacher visited Min Young in the hospital and was praised by the caregiver as a perfect 10 teacher, caring for his student more than her own family. The older sister only sent money on time and never visited. The teacher replied confidently, "She will definitely come soon," as if he knew something. Soo Young generously treated Jin Woo to a meal to thank him for agreeing to play her boyfriend, but he seemed more interested in her real dream. After eating the strange cookie, Jin Woo knew that her dream of Min Young waking up was a lie. She quickly changed the subject, suggesting they take couple photos. But a rich person wasn't accustomed to such common pleasures, and she, past the age of dreaming, was foolishly unaware. Soo Young claimed this was how she created her masterpieces. Jin Woo, caught off guard, should have been jealous seeing these intimate moments and denied reality. After all, there's only one heart. How could it be true love? Yet, Ho Soo had the nerve to pour cold water on the situation, stating firmly they were falling in love. Seeing her upset to the point of tears, he quickly backtracked, wondering why Jin Woo would reject such a beautiful, intelligent, and generous girl. Reuniting after their successful operation, they rejoiced at finally being able to officially run their business. Soo Young, still unaware that Ho Soo was the chef, completely trusted the kind boy. Her roommate was asleep, but Soo Young heard the familiar sound of a cookie wrapper being torn. It urged her towards the wardrobe, where she retrieved the peculiar treat and tucked herself into a corner to savor it. And of course, that wonderful feeling returned. Young Seo continued to excel, solving every math problem correctly and focusing so intently that she didn't hear the teacher calling her name until his voice was hoarse. He wanted to ask about her idea for a new club. She confidently shared her vision for free discussions on a single topic, but from the different perspectives of various academic disciplines. This would provide a much more multifaceted and in-depth understanding. The other students were enthusiastic, even wanting to spend more time writing essays. Young Seo was always there to help, either by offering advice or helping them focus with the Canadian ghost cookies. On one side, the teacher reported to the boss that Jin Woo had been in the US during the incident due to a rare illness. However, since no cure has been found yet, it's unlikely he's the chef they're looking for. But the boss is only concerned with the chef's identity, which the teacher hasn't been able to verify. So, the boss mentioned that his colleague survived being tortured in an oil drum. He suggests using the colleague to find the head chef would be faster, but the teacher, due to unwavering loyalty, refused. Yet, the boss sees this as irresponsible. Therefore, the teacher decides to use Soo Young as bait, confident it will yield results soon. Today, the two friends were treated by the bespectacled girl to their favorite dish. Its sweetness was profoundly moving, leaving them stunned while she casually enjoyed it. After the naive friend left, Ho Soo expressed regret, believing that if the sales were successful and Min Young received the medicine to wake up, they wouldn't have the chance to meet again. The girl truly forgets her age, embracing the passionate moments of her school days with her beloved friends. Just then, the factory director Jae-hee's father suddenly appears at school and calls her Soo Young, a name she's been trying hard to keep secret. Left with no choice, she avoids him to prevent her friends from finding out. He's there to contribute to the school's scholarship fund. Flustered, she claims she's cleaning and asks him not to mention her to the teachers, wanting to avoid rumors and complications. At that moment, the teacher appears. He casually introduces her as Soo Young, a former subordinate from his factory who now cleans at the school. This unexpected revelation leaves her speechless. Worried by her sudden disappearance, Ho Soo calls her, only to discover she left her phone behind. Later, the two confront each other after the secret is revealed. The teacher reveals he investigated the unique cookies at the school and that her motive for being there is to help Min Young wake up. He also discloses his true identity as an undercover police officer assigned to the school, explaining he knows everything. He apologizes for not preventing the unfortunate incident with Min Young, as the chef noticed something amiss and acted quickly. But an apology can't solve the problem. So, the teacher proposes they cooperate to catch the chef as soon as possible. It's also the best way to help her and her sister. Seeing Soo Young's anger, he manipulates her further, mentioning Min Young's bed sores from lack of care. He claims he visited her daily and ensured timely treatment. This leaves the sister, who hasn't visited, devastated with guilt. She pretends everything is fine, retrieves her phone from Ho Soo, and rushes to see her sister, consumed by guilt and remorse. As the teacher said, Min Young has indeed suffered. Soo Young silently cares for her sister, apologizing and explaining she hasn't forgotten her, but schoolwork has taken up all her time. Overwhelmed, Soo Young agrees to cooperate with the teacher to catch the chef. Ho Soo notices Soo Young's change. She's quieter and no longer participates in club activities. She suddenly tells him to focus on his studies and not help her, as the police are now involved. And so, Soo Young inadvertently reveals the plan to the secret chef, making Ho Soo suspicious and instantly alert. The teacher believes the chef wouldn't share the recipe with staff and must be smuggling ingredients into the basement laundry room for production. Therefore, the most critical task is to find out who's doing it. Soo Young immediately went to the secret headquarters to deliver the new client list. Seizing the opportunity, she tried to pickpocket her aunt's phone, but her aunt, ever alert, caught her in the act. She demanded that Soo Young send the information via text message instead of showing up in person so blatantly. So, Soo Young continued to monitor her aunt's movements. She carefully filmed her aunt sneaking to a public locker, retrieving a laundry bag, and casually walking away as if nothing had happened. Just then, Jin Woo appeared, blocking her path and demanding she get in his car immediately. It turned out to be a trap. The chef had suspected her betrayal and had sent someone to follow her. This time, he was helping her only because he wanted to know what she had actually dreamed after eating the cookie. In exchange, he would reveal the chef's true identity. Soo-young was surprised that Jin-woo possessed this crucial information. After some consideration, she revealed that she had dreamed of living her current life, as a young Seo without a sister and without the scars on her body. She dreamed of eating well, dressing well, making friends, falling in love, and studying things that seemed simple, but were so far out of reach and that she had missed out on in her life. Jin-woo was surprised by this answer. Sensing her sincerity, he revealed that on the day she first entered the laundry room, he had taken the antidote hidden in the locker. This medicine could immediately eliminate the side effects after eating the cookie. Jin-woo had decided to switch it, simply out of curiosity about how skilled the chef was to create such a miraculous thing. However, soon after, someone woke up thanks to a bottle of saline solution he had left behind, claiming it was the antidote. Wasn't it all a trick? In other words, Ho-soo hadn't eaten the cookie at all. The most vulnerable, poor, innocent, and harmless celebrity was the very mystery chef they had been searching for. Before all of this, the chef was just a diligent student who had fallen asleep from exhaustion after working too many part-time jobs. Ho-soo was tutoring a classmate but received a large sum of money along with a request to skip a session. He reluctantly agreed. He happened to see a picture of his friend's happy family, and it made him feel a pang of sadness. Looking back at his phone screen at the image of his ailing mother, he felt even more disheartened. Just then, his aunt, who was caring for his mother, called to say that she couldn't bear his mother's psychotic episodes, the destruction of property, and the disruption at the hospital any longer. Ho-soo begged her to keep helping him, promising to pay her more money. Returning to his cramped and damp apartment, he noticed signs of a break-in. So, he cautiously grabbed a frying pan for self-defense. He discovered his impoverished father hiding in the closet, stealing all of the savings he had worked so hard to earn. His father immediately ran away, despite his son's desperate pleas, because it was money for his mother's hospital bills and his tuition. He had worked day and night to earn that money, so he couldn't let his father waste it on drugs. However, the man still heartlessly kicked him and drove away, leaving Ho-soo devastated. He immediately went to the secret office to buy drugs, but the place was being frantically cleared out because the police were about to raid it. The boss ordered all the information to be transferred to a USB drive, thrown out the window, and then set the building on fire. Ho-soo, chasing his father, happened to be there. He just wanted to rush inside to retrieve his hard-earned money. When the explosion occurred, he was thrown to the ground. By chance, he saw the USB drive land safely in front of him, and he took it for himself. Back in the present, the gang leader is pouring his heart out to the teacher's colleague, insisting that he must retrieve the exclusive pastry recipe by any means necessary, and of course, deal with the pastry chef immediately. Meanwhile, Ho-soo is furious that his father foiled his plan to track down the police officer helping Soo-young. Jae-hoon even had his father interrupt him and discover his strange behavior. He immediately gives his father some of the pure, magical flour, and as expected, it brings undeniable pleasure and allure. Soo-young still can't believe that her gentle younger brother is the pastry chef. So, Jin-woo continues to unveil the secret. He recounts how he was on the brink of death, suffering from a rare illness that even modern medicine couldn't cure. That's when the pastry chef contacted him and provided him with cookies. Ever since Soo-young started eating the cookies, his health drastically improved. He eats well and studies well. But upon discovering that Ho-soo is the mastermind, he's not pleased. After all, how can he be an employee of someone so poor? So, if she doesn't plan on faking a feud, he will be the one to do it. Elsewhere, Ho-soo emphasized his family's difficult circumstances in his self-introduction, as a way to demonstrate his drive to succeed. But the teacher considers it a mistake, believing that the university won't care about his missing father or his mother's cancer. Disappointed by the teacher's criticism, Ho-soo is pulled aside by Soo-young for questioning. She asserts that only he knows about her collaboration with the police investigation. How did the pastry chef find out and track her? Could he be the pastry chef? Ho-soo feigns innocent ignorance and completely denies it. Soo-young breathes a sigh of relief that this terrible scenario hasn't come to pass. Yoon-seo suddenly remembers Jin-woo's warning. It's highly likely that the real pastry chef doesn't have an antidote either. Therefore, she wants to confirm this information herself. She presents 2 magical cookies and demands that Ho-Soo try them immediately. Meanwhile, the teacher's face pales when he receives a picture of his colleague from the director as a warning, and he immediately leaves the classroom. He realizes this is his chance to survive, as long as he can discover the pastry chef's identity. However, the gang leader still places his hopes on the teacher. After all, he was tortured in a drum of oil and has an elderly mother and young children. That's the teacher's fatal weakness, which he can use to control him unconditionally. Ho-Soo continues to act wronged, even loudly proclaiming his love for Min-young and his efforts to help her sell the pastries so the pastry chef will quickly provide the antidote. So why does she suspect him like this? Having no other choice, Soo-young resorts to force, trying to shove the cookies into his mouth. But how can she overcome a man's willpower? They struggle like this. She insists she won't stop, and if he is the pastry chef, she will make his life a living hell. He will have to face the law. Ho-Soo immediately changes his tactics, pressuring her to eat the cookies even though he doesn't want them himself. She feels truly heartbroken, having trusted and relied on him all this time. However, Ho-Soo reveals that he's only trying to save someone poor like her, to repay her for saving his life before. She responds with the blankest of smiles and collapses to the ground. Although feeling a pang of remorse, he has dealt with the biggest threat. He calls the man in the kitchen to the rooftop to clean up the scene. However, just then, he receives a powerful blow from behind, delivered by Jin-woo. He pretends to be the pastry chef and demands an end to the call, but Jin-woo is more alert, carefully checking for a signal through the way the screen is tapped. However, he receives no response. Sensing something is wrong, he immediately goes to the rooftop mentioned earlier. But there's nothing there but bloodstains. With Jin-woo's help, Soo-young successfully tied up the chef in the school's storage room. Since he insisted he was experimenting with an antidote for Min-young, she asked her ally for time to consider it instead of taking it immediately. Just as the teacher appeared, the gang leader intimidated him by reminding him of his brutal past torture in oil drums. Right then, Soo-young called and informed him that she had found the chef. However, he didn't have the medicine to save Min-young. So, she wasn't satisfied with punishing him legally. She wanted to eliminate him to satisfy her anger. With this new clue, the teacher wanted to finish things alone instead of recruiting more people. His colleague was on the brink of death, which seemed to have become a habit. Every night, Soo-young had to recharge her energy with that monstrous cake. The teacher questioned Ho-Soo's absence from class. Jin-woo quickly lied, saying that he had gone to the hospital to care for his mother and was in such a hurry that he hadn't had time to ask for permission. Wanting to monitor Soo-young's every move, the teacher again played the role of a concerned educator, enlisting Hee-jin's help by manipulating her into believing the school suspected young Seo of cheating on exams. Already jealous of her roommate, Hee-jin naturally had no reason to refuse. She took a picture of a blood-stained jacket and sent it to the teacher as evidence, revealing that someone had seen young Seo with Jin-woo last night. But wasn't that when she was talking to Ho-Soo? Today, he had vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, Jin-woo went to check on the chef only to find that young Seo hadn't been there, nor had she been to class. He suddenly remembered her vow to take the life of his demented mother. Ho-Soo panicked, begging to be untied to protect her. In return, he would do anything Jin-woo wanted. But the only response was silence. Indeed, young Seo was at the hospital, even claiming to be Ho-Soo's girlfriend. Her eyes suddenly turned cold. She held 2 crushed cakes in her hands. The teacher, also looking for Ho-Soo, contacted his mother's hospital but was bewildered to be told that only his girlfriend was there. Young Seo returned to the storage room. No matter how Ho-Soo cursed, it was useless. Revenge had to be taken. He had made it so Min-young couldn't wake up, so why couldn't she do the same? Ho-Soo was terrified, begging her to say she hadn't harmed his poor mother. But Soo-young suddenly found it amusing, wanting him to torment himself, unsure whether his mother was alive or dead. Only then would he understand the feeling of plummeting from the heights of hope into the depths of despair. So, Ho-Soo revealed, if it weren't for him, she would have actually died a long time ago. Driven by a letter from her terrible father, she had even planned to jump from the school rooftop. He had decided to hire Min-young at the bakery specifically to save her. The teacher arrived at the hospital, but there was no one there except the patient. A caregiver told him that Ho-soo was a perfect 10, obedient, and an excellent student, so the school was sponsoring all of his surgery and treatment costs. Thanks to that, he no longer had to tire himself out working extra jobs to earn money. Furthermore, she confirmed that Ho-soo was pitiful, having a drug-addicted father who wandered the streets, his fate unknown. Meanwhile, Soo-young decided to untie Ho-soo, assuring him that his mother was safe. He just needed to focus on creating the medicine to wake Min-young. He breathed a sigh of relief and fainted from exhaustion. Jin-woo expressed his dissatisfaction with her soft-heartedness, letting Ho-soo off the hook so easily and leaving his mother alone. But she hadn't come to this school for revenge, especially since the woman was genuinely struggling with illness. So, she couldn't bring herself to act, even though she knew she was foolish to trust that Ho-soo would create the medicine she needed. But this was her way of surviving, despite the hardships of raising her younger sister and giving up on her own dreams. Even after receiving a letter from her deadbeat father, she still chose to believe that a miracle would happen and things would get better. When confronted by the undercover cop, Soo-young apologized for mistaking the chef's true identity. Suspicious of her, he tested her by bringing up Ho-soo's fall down the stairs and the resulting blood loss. As expected, she acted confused, pretending to know nothing. But the lingering crimson stain on her name tag had already given her away. Ho-soo returned home from the hospital and carefully unlocked a hidden room where he made his Canada Fantasy cookies, filled with mysterious tools and ingredients. His aunt called the chef to report they were out of supplies. Just then, Young Seo arrived to provide a list of new customers. Soo-young used a voice modulator to disguise her voice, praising Young Seo for her diligence. But before she could finish her sentence, the call abruptly ended. It turned out the teacher had broken in and swiftly subdued her with a tranquilizer. He listened to the recorded call, but Soo-young, suspecting something was amiss, tapped a code into her phone as a check. There was no response from the other end, meaning the person on the line wasn't the chef. Ho-soo woke up to find himself tied to a chair. His captor was none other than his teacher. He calmly thanked Ho-soo for creating the cookies, explaining that they had led him to this place and saved his life. Ho-soo still feigned innocence, pretending to be clueless. The teacher revealed, "You better worry about yourself, because the owner of this secret recipe is about to arrive." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a knock at the door, terrifying Ho-soo. It turned out the teacher had been present at the fire years ago, but had arrived too late. The boss's cookie recipe had fallen into Ho-soo's hands without anyone knowing. Everyone expected the boss to appear, but instead, a strange student stood at the door. An hour earlier, Soo-young had sensed something was wrong, contacted the hospital, and learned that Ho-soo had returned home. She knew he was in danger. Ignoring Jin-woo's questions, she hopped into the rebellious Min-jun's car and immediately hatched a rescue plan. She announced a special event to her customers. Anyone who went to Ho-soo's address would receive 10 free cookies. No wonder the addicts were scrambling to get there. She didn't stop there. Anyone who brought the person in the picture Ho-soo out of the house would receive free cookies for a month. As a result, not just one but many young men and women converged on the small house, phones at the ready, striving to rescue Ho-soo and claim the special prize. The teacher could only watch. Just as Ho-soo was brought outside, Soo-young appeared, pushing through the crowd to pull him from the chaos. She didn't miss giving a suspicious glance at the undercover cop posing as a teacher. However, Ho-soo had dropped his phone. His face paled when he saw the crowd of heroes now loitering in front of his house. The teacher directly contacted the boss, proposing a deal. He would help the boss eliminate the gangster in exchange for the recipe. Fortunately, the boss agreed, but demanded proof that the teacher had the head chef under his control. As for the remaining 3 easily dealt with targets like that gangster, those could be handled anytime. However, the gangster had overheard the agreement, a nervous twitch now plaguing him. The teacher recalled the terrifying time he was stuffed into an oil drum by the gangster for failing to control Kai-suk. The police had come to their office, and they nearly ended up in jail if they hadn't destroyed the evidence in time. However, Kai-suk was not only a colleague, but also a former classmate and practically family. This presented an opportunity to extract information about the investigation. Sure enough, with just a few casual questions, Kaizuk revealed that it seemed a powerful figure was backing these drug traffickers. He vowed to eradicate the scum. As soon as he left, the teacher turned over a framed photo of them together, a symbolic gesture of his betrayal. Hosu seemed to realize that the teacher wasn't an ordinary policeman, but that his real purpose at the school was to find the dream cookie recipe. He also knew that he was spared not out of mercy, but simply for the sake of his sister's survival. It was so accurate that she couldn't do anything but admit it. Knowing that Hosu would become the teacher's next target, they decided to rent a hotel with tight security as a precaution. To plan how to deal with the fake cop, she needed the focus that the smiley face cookie could provide. Hosu clearly saw the marks left by both Su-young earlier and the teacher just now. His mind started to become hazy. Meanwhile, Min-young, who had been unconscious for a long time, suddenly smiled in her sleep. She became annoyed seeing her sister happily chatting on the phone with her boyfriend. On top of that, her sister bought a lot of new clothes and told her not to touch them. How selfish! She was also bothered by the loud noise from upstairs. Meanwhile, Su-young couldn't hear anything. Elsewhere, Hosu suddenly remembered the teacher's warning. He was certain that some terrifying force was behind this operation and urged Su-young to act. Su-young also mentioned Un, a classmate who was also present during the chaotic rescue earlier. He was also a member of the club she founded, and his father was a renowned police chief. So, she asked him to investigate the teacher. Besides, she also reached out to Jin Woo, the family's low-key powerful young master, to gather all the data he had acquired while working at the school. Therefore, all they had to do was wait for the results, and they would formulate a plan to capture the teacher. However, things didn't go as planned as almost all information about the teacher had been erased. Just then, he arrived, casually walking in and excitedly greeting them. It turned out he had planted a tracker and knew their movements. Without hesitation, the teacher displayed his martial arts skills, swiftly taking down Hosu, leaving him in pain on the floor. He also advised Su-young not to be foolish enough to believe the head chef's promise to help Min-young wake up. Simply because the recipe wasn't Hosu's, he had only stolen it and claimed it as his own. How could he possibly create an antidote? Although surprised, Su-young quickly regained her composure, stopping him from taking Hosu away. She openly threatened to contact the school and report the teacher's disappearance. At that point, he was cornered, his impersonation exposed. He let out a sarcastic laugh. "Aren't you the same as me? Su-young that name? It's just a cover." But they were different in one aspect. He was trying to survive, and she wasn't. Well, what can I say to that? He had no choice but to agree to her deal, return to school and pretend nothing had happened. And Hosu had to prepare the baking ingredients so he could have proof to report to his superiors. By now, Su-young understood why they wanted Hosu alive, to retrieve the lost formula and continue their illegal business. Therefore, she couldn't afford to show weakness. She had to focus on her research to help Min-young wake up. Seeing Su-young's chillingly serious demeanor, a man, presumably the teacher villain, revealed that after Su-young ate the cookies, her sister's phantom dreamed that the scar on her face and their lousy father would disappear. Her pitiful sister would learn to love herself. Whether she was annoyed or displeased, Su-young would generously forgive her, always be by her side, and kindly care for her. Suddenly, someone mysteriously removed Min-young from her hospital room. Su-young continued eating the cookies to bolster her resolve. Though heartbroken by her sister's dream, Su-young met with the teacher at school. He bluntly revealed that he had intended to take Hosu's mother. However, the clever boy had protected her by transferring her to another treatment facility. So, he had no choice but to take her sister instead. He proposed a deal. If Su-young obediently handed over the formula, he would ensure that experienced researchers would work on a cure for the side effects plaguing Min-young. He had given the boss the Mai-thai, presumably a drug that Su-young took from Hosu, promising to return the chef, presumably Hosu, soon. Now, it was time for him to eliminate that small-time gangster boss. The boss, oblivious to the impending danger, calmly signed a contract with a business partner. Only when his bodyguards were systematically taken down by a mysterious group of gangsters did the situation descend into chaos. Guilt gnawed at Su-young for betraying Hosu. Although furious that Hosu had endangered her sister, She stated she didn't want to hand the chef back to that monstrous organization. However, the teacher warned her that the situation was beyond her control and that she shouldn't waste her efforts protecting Ho-soo. He wouldn't die anyway. Before enacting his plan to trap Ho-soo, Soo-young demanded to see her sister's condition. He confidently sent her a picture. The moment he turned his back to leave the hidden room, Min-young suddenly awoke. It turned out that in her coma, Min-young hadn't wanted to wake up because of a strange sound that haunted and echoed in her ears, but because Soo-young was constantly by her side, soothing her pain and panic. She was able to escape the terrifying dream, walk through the metaphorical door, and wake up with resilience. When the teacher stealthily removed her from the hospital room, she cleverly pretended to be unconscious. Only when she was alone did she carefully sit up, attempting to escape. But the weakness in her legs, a side effect of the Mai Tai, caused her to collapse, creating a loud noise that alerted the teacher nearby. Suspicious, he immediately returned to check on her. Luckily, when the lights came on, she was lying still as if nothing had happened. Ho-soo returned to his dorm room to find his aunt waiting at the door. She immediately called the chef. But, of course, the other end of the line only responded with a disconnected message. The chef clearly couldn't answer the phone. Despite her suspicions that he was the chef and that Soo-young had orchestrated the special event to rescue him, Ho-soo feigned innocence. He simply warned her to be careful what she said, or she might be in danger. This made her wary and apprehensive. Ho-soo, renowned for his academic prowess, surprisingly failed every single question. Horrifying memories began to resurface, revealing the extreme hardship and suffering he had endured. He had believed a certain formula would change his life, but instead, it led his friends to sell salt and inflicted considerable pain on himself. It was a prolonged chain of tragedies and mistakes. Only with Soo-young's arrival did the correct answer emerge, so he mustered the courage to ask for her help. She agreed, but her eyes darted away. She was still determined to find the real student counselor, as that was the teacher's critical weakness. The problem was, he had already eliminated the unfortunate counselor, and she had no concrete proof. However, this was precisely her plan to trick Ho-soo into leaving school and meeting a witness for verification. She manipulated him psychologically, saying that if he didn't trust her, she could go alone. Life and death didn't matter at this point. And, of course, the prey quickly fell into the trap. She had an internal dialogue, telling herself to be strong and ruthless. Only then could she find a way forward. After all, it was just tit for tat. Ho-soo had deceived her once, too. So, feelings of guilt were unnecessary. Once everything was over, she would return to her previous peaceful life. However, Soo-young also felt regret for the ambitious and passionate 19-year-old self she had lost. But the present Soo-young had to be strong, hiding her emotions, simply smiling and moving forward. Her friends suggested taking commemorative photos before parting ways and entering the university entrance exams. Despite the rain, they went outside and began the process of taking countless pictures in various poses. Jin-woo, typically aloof and distant, was now willingly acting as the photographer to please his temporary girlfriend, even specifically choosing to capture Soo-young's radiant moments. Yet, when it came to group photos, he was completely uncooperative. Thus, her heart shattered into two. Hee-jin, consumed by jealousy, turned pale and gossiped to Ho-soo that young Seo was just suffering from a princess complex, considering herself the center of the universe, but he naively took it as a compliment. Earlier, Soo-young had demanded the teacher come to class, provoking Ho-soo's hatred to ensure he wouldn't change his mind about leaving school to uncover the truth. He obliged, thinking to himself that she must really hate this chef. The boss had completed the task of eliminating the gang leader with his usual brutal methods. The distinctive tattoos on the fingers were the easiest way to identify the disfigured body. He even returned the victim's unlocked personal phone, confidently asserting that he would soon hand over the chef. However, an announcement declared that young Seo had successfully achieved her sales target and would soon be leaving. Her face remained unchanged, as if she had already known. Meanwhile, Min-young was utterly helpless, looking around, but the place was pitch black, like a jungle at night. Finally, the awaited day arrived, and they left school together for the meeting point. Soo-young thoughtfully prepared a can of drink for him. After a few sips, Ho-soo became dizzy. She forcefully pushed him away, causing him to fall to the ground, apologizing and explaining that she had to do it to save Min Young. After all, he couldn't wake his sister up, so there was no need to risk his life protecting her. At that moment, the teacher strolled over, brimming with satisfaction, and announced he would give Su Young Min Young's address. Su Young took a taxi to the location, but had to continue on foot as the car couldn't access the area, which resembled a maze. Meanwhile, the teacher had also taken the chef away. His trademark smile was still plastered on his face, but it vanished within seconds. Ho-Su suddenly sprang up, having been unexpectedly drugged. However, knowing Min Young had been kidnapped, he had preemptively asked Su Young to call the teacher immediately after he finished his drink. Ho-Su attacked from behind, and the drug took effect. His eyes changed, and a sinister smile crept onto his face. Just then, they faced an oncoming truck. Ho-Su reacted quickly and swerved, but a horrific accident was unavoidable. Meanwhile, Su Young finally discovered the hidden room, but Min Young was gone. Panic seized her as she imagined the worst, fearing she'd never see her sister again. As Su-Hu struggled to escape the burning wreckage of the car, he quickly called Su Young with the good news that he was alive. But Su Young, desperate to find her sister, wanted to save the teacher. Su-Hu, unable to leave him to die while Su Young pleaded, reluctantly gave her the teacher's location. Rushing to the given address, Su Young received an unexpected call from Min Young, overwhelming her with joy. She sped to the hospital and, upon seeing Min Young alive and conscious, was overcome with relief. Unable to believe it, she embraced her younger sister tightly, comforting her. Fortunately, Min Young's examination revealed no serious injuries, and she would be discharged after a few days of treatment. Once she calmed down, Su Young immediately bombarded Min Young with 1,000 questions. Why? How did she wake up? How did she escape and get to the hospital? However, Min Young wanted to rest and promised to tell the whole story later. By now, she knew that Ho-Su was the mysterious chef, because while she was captive, she had overheard names like Young Seo, the teacher, and Ho-Su. But she didn't want her sister to delve any deeper into this and urged her to leave the school immediately. Otherwise, the addicted customers would continue to contact and bother her. If that happened, Su Young would just start thinking about those magical cookies and gobble them down again. Min Young had tried them and knew that feeling all too well. But from now on, she was determined to quit and wouldn't need them anymore. Moreover, with the help of the man who rescued her yesterday, she could get her own revenge without her sister having to do it. It turned out that while she was searching for a way out of the dark room, someone had broken down the door and come to her rescue. It was the teacher's pig-like boss. He said that he had almost been killed, but luckily escaped. Wanting revenge on the teacher, he had followed him and discovered the secret prison. Furthermore, he knew all about the plan to hand over the chef to the boss today, so he had set up an ambush, and the teacher would definitely pay the price. Now they needed to return to a cookie-free world and continue their lives. Sure enough, while Jin-Woo was still at the scene of the accident waiting for Su Young, the boss appeared with a bright smile. Su Young wished her sister goodnight before returning home to rest, and Min Young promised to work hard from now on and always wanted to live with her sister, even though she was old enough to be independent. Those words truly touched Su Young. She also thought that everything was over. It was time for her to return to her messy, cluttered house, which she hadn't cleaned in a while. She carefully rearranged a picture of the two sisters as children and began the cleaning process, ready for a new life. However, the rustling sounds of the cookies echoed in her ears, urging her, "Quickly devour me." So, despite her best efforts, Su Young couldn't overcome this temptation, claiming she would only eat one last cookie. Jin-Woo was worried when she was absent from school, but relieved that she was safe. However, Su Young wanted to leave the school as soon as possible, but Jin-Woo needed time to process Young Seo's paperwork. Just then, many other vacant-eyed young men and women turned their craving gazes towards the bakery's saleswoman. Without the chef, she wouldn't be able to stay there in peace. They became frantic without their fix, urgently demanding that she provide them with more cookies. Just as the argument escalated, the naive Hee-jin appeared, curiously saying that she was simply predicting the exam questions. Su Young was startled by these real-life zombies, then froze when she saw Ho-Su appear before her eyes. Meanwhile, Min Young was still trying to do physical therapy, but in her eagerness, she fell awkwardly. The doctors advised her, If you want to recover quickly, you need time, so don't waste your energy like that. Right then, the distinct sound of ghost cookie wrappers tearing filled the air, causing Min-young to clutch her head and scream in terror. Ho-soo declared he was quitting as a chef and stopping cookie sales, even advising Jin-woo to see a doctor and get painkillers for his condition. Enraged at the perceived insult, Jin-woo grabbed Ho-soo by the collar, threatened him, and landed a powerful blow. However, this Ho-soo was different. He fought back. He'd endured the bullying not out of fear for Cam, but simply because he was using Jin-woo's money to pay for his tuition. Soo-young followed Ho-soo, wanting to understand what had happened, and even offering to help. However, Ho-soo just wanted to shut down the entire operation. He informed his aunt of his decision, demanding she close the laundromat. She protested vehemently, worried about losing her free cookies and spending money. She even promised to stop searching for the chef's identity if he just kept things running as they were. But it was no use. Ho-soo had already messaged all his customers, announcing the brand's closure and wishing them a happy life. Soo-young also resolved to quit, crushing the remaining cookie in her hand and carefully storing it in her closet before returning to her younger sister. She revealed she would soon look for a job, keeping herself busy to avoid thinking about the cursed cookies. Though she tried to smile and appear calm, Min-young sensed a change in her sister. Hee-jin froze as she watched numerous classmates swarm young Seo's room, ransacking her belongings. Min-jun was the lucky one who found the last remaining cookie, but then they all pounced on it like ravenous animals. Meanwhile, Ho had prepared a massive bag of methamphetamine for his father, revealing he was dropping out of school. But his father's attention was solely focused on the pristine white powder, his precious drug. Ho thanked him, explaining that his addiction had provided the money for his mother's medical treatment. Out of pity or gratitude, Ho-soo gave his terminally ill roommate the last 3 cookies, but in a characteristically nonchalant manner, dropping them unceremoniously on the floor. Elsewhere, Soo-young diligently worked at her new job, but the owner declared a week-long unpaid trial period due to her lack of experience, blatant exploitation. Dejectedly returning home, she found a huge bag of methamphetamine neatly placed at her doorstep. An idea sparked, partnering with her aunt at the laundromat to create her own version of the cookies. With the ingredients seemingly falling from the sky, they eagerly awaited their first batch. Unable to contain her excitement, the aunt immediately indulged, devouring a cookie to satisfy her craving. Uncontrollable laughter erupted after she swallowed the small treat, frightening Soo-young away from trying one herself. She decided against honest labor and meager wages, opting instead for illicit wealth, doubling the price to 6 million for a beautiful smile. Yet, the customer base remained undeterred, eager to buy as many as possible. Her proficiency increased along with the thickness of her wad of cash. A single cookie yielded unimaginable profits. While demand continued to surge, the last cookie's ingredients were finally depleted. Meanwhile, Ho-soo snuck a peek into Jin-woo's closet and discovered the 3 gifted cookies untouched, curious why he hadn't eaten them. But, of course, he was ignored. Min-jun, having bribed his way to no avail in acquiring the magic cookies, flew into a rage, threatening Soo-young's life. She, however, could only vehemently refuse. By now, Ho-soo realized she had taken over his role as the school's cookie supplier. Soo-young, far from being discreet, taunted him, implying he must have made a fortune. Not wanting the situation to escalate, Ho-soo offered to cover Min-young's entire hospital bill, reasoning that he was the source of the ingredients. If he stopped, she'd be left with nothing. He warned her that if she continued, she would never be the same Soo-young again, and her customers would soon tear her apart. Secretly, Ho-soo boarded a mysterious vehicle, delivering goods to the passenger, a notorious kingpin. It turned out this man was his savior. When Director Hyo had bound and gagged him, throwing him into a truck to extract the recipe and gain favor with the kingpin himself had orchestrated Ho-soo's rescue. He advised Ho-soo to continue with his secret recipe, but instead of the broad school market, to sell exclusively to him. Meanwhile, Soo-young dreamt of another miraculous ingredient delivery, but it remained just a dream. Just then, she received a text summoning her to Ho-soo's place for more ingredients, and she went without hesitation. In the dark, cramped room, the figure who appeared delivered a terrifying surprise, her teacher, the one she had so cruelly deceived. Furthermore, he revealed he had killed Ho-soo's father, stolen the precious goods the father had received from his son, and left them at her doorstep. The reason the chef was no longer operating at school wasn't guilt or boredom with money, but simply a new, much larger client. Therefore, the teacher proposed she should partner with him and begin her own profitable enterprise. Alone, the teacher reflected on his good fortune, having been rescued by a passerby and rushed to the hospital. He immediately contacted the chairman, offering to reveal the chef's identity and collaborate for profit. However, the chairman refused, revealing he had switched sides and was now protecting the chef. Unable to stomach the betrayal, the teacher turned to the peculiar substance for a fleeting sense of euphoria. The bespectacled girl suddenly appeared, looking haggard, begging Young Seo for help, claiming Min Young would torment her to death. Immediately after, numerous loyal customers arrived, their gazes predatory and hungry. Even Ho-soo was present to witness her utter panic. Left with no other choice, she shamelessly pleaded with Ho-soo to share his recipe. Acknowledging the danger, she reasoned they shared a similar fate of suffering, appealing to his compassion. Soo-young confided in her younger sister, sharing that for 4 years since their father's hospitalization, she had tirelessly worked countless jobs to exhaustion, hoping for a better life. But despite her efforts, nothing had changed. She urged Min Young to be strong, to confront her scar and emotional wounds, and to overcome them all. Hee Jin gossiped with Ho-soo, mentioning the infirmary overflowing with students collapsing on their desks as night fell. She suspected it was related to Young Seo, recalling the recent commotion at the dormitory. Ho-soo remained impassive, advising her not to worry, as Young Seo would soon be returning to the US anyway. Returning to his room, he found Soo-young sitting in his place, demanding the cookie recipe. Anticipating his resistance, she had prepared a video call with their ailing mother. With the teacher by her side, Ho-soo furiously snatched the phone to prevent disaster, but the teacher abruptly ended the call at Dong's command. He insisted that handing over the recipe was the only way for both Soo-young and the teacher to survive, and for his mother's safety. Determined to replace him as the head chef, Soo-young left him no choice. Ho-soo reluctantly agreed to share the recipe, but first, he insisted on checking on his mother. At that moment, she suffered a seizure, foaming at the mouth. He frantically urged them to call her caregiver, who knew the necessary medication. The unexpected crisis left the teacher panicked and unsure what to do. Thinking quickly, Hu grabbed the phone to call the caregiver, only to hear a familiar ringtone through the video call. It turned out the teacher had already fed the cursed cookies to his mother, who was already beyond saving. Enraged, Ho-soo smashed everything in sight, warning Soo-young he would make her pay if anything happened to his mother. He rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Ho-soo tearfully begged the doctor to ease his mother's pain, cradling her lifeless body in his arms, his sobs racking his body. The funeral was a somber affair. Soo-young was the only visitor, offering condolences to the grieving Ho-soo. He cautioned her to be extremely careful, as the recipe she now possessed was a target for powerful forces. It was the very thing that had led to his parents' tragic deaths. Just then, the chairman arrived and promptly asked Soo-young to leave, avoiding an awkward confrontation. As she departed, the laptop repairman informed her that data recovery was unlikely. She simply replied, "Just throw it away," as if severing ties with the vicious cycle of misfortune. Ma-soo reappeared at school after a long absence, carrying his mother's ashes and requesting leave from the teacher. He proudly announced his third-place ranking in the entire school, a gesture to give his mother the experience of attending a parent-teacher meeting, leaving everyone bewildered and unnerved. With an emotionless face, he reassured her, "Don't worry, we'll see each other again soon," as strange sounds once again tormented Min Young. She expressed her desire to enter rehab to end her cravings, determined to overcome her addiction instead of succumbing to it. Another bag of precious ingredients appeared at her doorstep, and she couldn't resist the temptation to bake another batch. She considered trying one, but remembering her sister's resilience, she found no reason to continue down that destructive path. On the day of Ho-soo's discharge from the hospital, he unexpectedly visited Soo-young after their long separation. Meanwhile, Soo-young had given Jin Woo a cookie as a parting gift. Just then, the bespectacled girl reappeared, angrily accusing Soo-young of driving Min Jun to increased madness and relentless bullying since her arrival. Suspecting the cookie hidden in Young Seo's bag, she lunged for it. To her surprise, Young Seo protected it with her life. At that very moment, Hee-jin emerged, wondering aloud, "What in the world are they doing?" Back at school, she was immediately accosted by a customer demanding the cookies, the effects already kicking in. Young Seo calmly told them to be quiet and follow her to a more private location. Word spread quickly, and soon a line of eager regulars formed, promising absolute secrecy in exchange for continuing this phantom cookie operation. A deal was struck, and they obediently queued up, receiving their cookies one by one. Amidst the excited whispers, the last in line was her bespectacled friend. Once close to young Seo, she hesitated, but young Seo urged her to try one, and she relented. Meanwhile, Ho-soo revealed to Min-young that their sister and her accomplices had eliminated their parents to obtain the recipe, usurping his position as head chef. Just then, his cravings surged again, accompanied by disturbing sounds. Unexpectedly, Ho-soo gently placed the final cookie on the bed and looked at her expectantly. Elsewhere, their teacher showed up at the school looking for young Seo, having been unable to reach her for days. He too had risked his life for the recipe and wasn't about to let her reap all the benefits. Soo-young pretended to comply but seized the opportunity to pull the fire alarm and escape. As the crowd surged outwards, it was revealed that this was all orchestrated by Ho-soo. He had asked Hee-jin to take a photo of young Seo at school and send it to the teacher in exchange for revealing a shocking truth about young Seo. Harboring a grudge, Hee-jin carried out her task perfectly. Back in the present, the fire alarm blared, but Jin-woo remained unfazed. Ho-soo had arranged to meet Soo-young at home to hand over the recipe. When she arrived, flustered, he mocked her for selling the cookies without trying them herself. If she had, she'd be with the Grim Reaper, not sitting here. He revealed that the ingredients he'd left at her door had been 10 times the normal dosage. One bite was enough to be fatal, and he imagined the school must be in chaos. The hallway indeed presented a horrifying scene, with many others experiencing similar reactions. Soo-young prayed it wasn't true. If he wanted revenge, why target innocent customers instead of her? But what was his fault when she was the one selling them? He, of course, hadn't forgotten his revenge on Min-young, having given her a similar cookie, and he smiled with malicious glee. Panicked, Soo-young called her sister. The agonizing wait felt like an eternity, testing her heart's endurance. Thankfully, Min-young answered, and Soo-young managed to stop her from eating the cookie. She immediately rushed to the school, urgently warning everyone to stop consuming the cookies. Spotting Min-young there, Hee-jin inquired and learned the whole story. Feigning interest in trying the cookie, she promised to keep quiet in exchange. Min-young naively agreed and handed it over, unaware it was a trick. Hee-jin planned to report it to the police. Arriving at the school, Soo-young finally grasped the magnitude of the disaster she had caused. She raced to the broadcasting room, determined to confess everything. Min-young tried to stop her, even suggesting they run away and hide. But things had gone too far. Soo-young couldn't shirk her responsibility. She announced over the loudspeaker that the cookies she distributed yesterday were potentially fatal and urged everyone to stop eating them immediately. However, many students in the dormitory hadn't received the warning, so she rushed there before it was too late. Min-young offered to take the blame, reasoning that the tragedy had started with her. In return, she urged Soo-young to use the recipe on the USB drive Ho-soo had left in the hospital room to survive. Of course, Soo-young couldn't let her sister bear the burden alone. She rushed to the dormitory only to be intercepted by the teacher, who dragged her to the laundry room, demanding the recipe. She agreed to comply after warning all her customers. A wave of relief washed over her as the announcement echoed through the school, urging everyone to stop eating the cursed cookies. Just then, Min-young, determined to rescue her sister, arrived. She grabbed the recipe, telling the teacher to come find her if he wanted it. How could she live peacefully while Soo-young was caught in this nightmare? Soo-young, genuinely happy to be back within the familiar walls of the school, reminisced about cherished memories from when she was 19. She expressed her gratitude to Min-young for her bravery in resisting Ho-soo's cookie and staying safe. Overwhelmed with remorse for the lives lost, she pleaded to confess while she still had the courage to take responsibility. She crumpled to the floor, sobbing in despair next to her sister. Meanwhile, the teacher was apprehended by the fake chairman's henchmen disguised as police officers. He could only manage a bitter smile, realizing he'd fallen into the chairman's trap once again. Soo-young, handcuffed and wearing the silver bracelet, was escorted to the police station, enduring the harsh curses of her former customers. She bowed her head in silent apology, bidding a sad farewell to her dear sister. However, the police car unexpectedly veered onto a deserted road, stopping in a desolate area. Before her stood the powerful tycoon she had encountered at Ho-Su's mother's funeral. It turned out that Ho-Su had revealed Su-young as the current holder of the recipe before taking his own life by consuming a lethal dose of the cookies. His lifeless body, still bearing his characteristic smile, was discarded under a bridge, his usefulness expended. Time passed, and Min-young persistently visited the police station, offering energy drinks to the officers, hoping to expedite the search for her missing sister. True to her word, she worked diligently, supporting herself through honest labor. She kept a journal, confiding her thoughts and clinging to the hope that her sister would return someday. Before Su-young's confession, Min-young had vowed not to use the money earned from the cookies, instead relying on her own hard work to cover her living and educational expenses. She continued to live in their old house, receiving letters from their incarcerated father. Min-young was determined to live a life that would make her sister proud. Su-young, holding the USB drive containing the recipe, smiled, deeply moved by her sister's maturity. As Min-young continued working at the restaurant, a scream shattered the quiet. She cautiously entered the dining area to find a customer in critical condition, clutching a phantom cookie. A chillingly familiar smile etched on their face. Initial fear gave way to a surge of understanding. This was a sign that Su-young was still alive. Min-young vowed to find her. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos.